And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sri Lanka.
Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, allow me the opportunity to congratulate Ambassador Carlos Amarin and the other members of the Bureau on your election and express confidence in your able stewardship. Sri Lanka also thanks the outgoing Bureau, led by Ambassador Lachazara Stowa during the 77th session of the UNGA. We also wish to thank Professor Jayati Ghosh for the very thought-provoking keynote address at the opening session of the committee yesterday. Chair, Sri Lanka aligns itself with the statement made by Cuba on behalf of the G77 and China. In fact, the rationale of this statement echoes the sentiment expressed by the President of Sri Lanka at the high-level dialogue on financing for development on the 20th September. He said, "While we have heard words of solidarity, when will we witness solidarity translated into action?" At this dialogue, our President drew specific attention to the predicament of the middle-income countries in times of financial distress, particularly due to the lack of a common framework and procedures. It is necessary indeed to develop a comprehensive plan to address the financial difficulties of the MICs, which have been neglected until the crisis was compounded and multiple countries faced near collapse. Chair, our priorities are to address climate change and financing for development. Building back better and broader has become more urgent and more feasible. The goal is to recover rapidly and achieve strong long-term growth that's ecologically sustainable and economically, socially inclusive and resilient. The Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement provide, as we see, embody values and principles for the future. At a time of growing international division and threats to the global order, these themes can and should unify. Mr. Chairman, the new path does not mean trading prosperity for abstract principles. The perception that the current generation could be asked to somehow pay for its sins has burdened the discussion and weighed down the psychology of change. Defining a new course will enable more comprehensive use of all assets within planetary and societal boundaries. Today's inequality and market failures mean that capacity, talent, and potential resources are wasted while others are consumed in unsustainable excesses. Sustainability, Mr. Chairman, rooted in new technologies and practices must drive a new industrial revolution. To build back better, therefore, we need broad-based recovery that leaves no one behind. We need to build a more resilient, inclusive society, and we need to make our economy grow quickly and sustainably. Effective financing for development is therefore crucial for achieving the SDGs and promoting inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Against this backdrop, Sri Lanka has been moderately successful, thankfully, as a result of the regraduation of its recovery process since its debt default last year. This has been a difficult period for the country, with its most vulnerable segments of society as well as the middle-income sector bearing the brunt of the crisis. With the ongoing economic development, Sri Lanka has laid out a sustainable economic growth roadmap for the upcoming future. The government's economic reform efforts are currently under evaluation by the IMF. The negotiations to secure the second tranche of funding from the International Monetary Fund are progressing positively. The local debt optimization program is nearing its completion, and discussions regarding foreign loans are already in progress with all our creditors. Sri Lanka appreciates the willingness of partner countries to support the foreign debt optimization program. However, many developing countries burdened with substantial debt highlight the inadequacy of the existing mechanisms to address this new situation. Mr. Chair, Sri Lanka reiterates its call for debt forgiveness or write-offs for low-income countries and would encourage favorable consideration of this concept, which can be considered a viable alternative, I say, to the establishment of such of the much-canvassed loss and damage fund. While acknowledging concerns of the creditors, a focused approach on this proposal is required for immediate relief. As my President once again said, if we don't provide that relief immediately, meaning now, we can write off all other proposals we have made. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka supports the Secretary General's accelerated climate action agenda. Based on concrete, achievable climate action, Sri Lanka has adopted a dual approach to mitigate the imminent loss of Sri Lanka's GDP due to climate-related issues, as warned of by experts. At COP27, Sri Lanka presented the nation's strategy for green growth based on renewable energy generation. It is also part of Sri Lanka's economic restructuring consequent to the 2022 financial crisis. We recall that President Wickremesinghe at the Climate Ambition Summit also declared Sri Lanka's intention to support the establishment of a climate justice forum aimed at fostering international collaboration to address climate-related challenges. Mr. Chair, as the incumbent chair of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, Sri Lanka is committed to seeking closer implementation of the principles of the Buenos Aires Action Plan. Sri Lanka re-echoes the proposals of the G77 statement, the need for reform, the need to engage in a renewed commitment to actively promote a rules-based order, to eliminate forms of unilateral coercive measures, to increase the provisions and mobilization of climate finance for adaptation and resilience. Mr. Chairman, may I observe in conclusion that in working towards the action plan as suggested by the G77, it is essential to rebuild trust, I say rebuild trust, and reignite global solidarity, as the theme of the 78th session of the UNGA reflects. These actions should form the basis for a comprehensive policy package that can harness the combined efforts of both the public and private sector. Actions should be coordinated globally, making finance and technology available and accessible to developing countries through international cooperation. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Sri Lanka